So, you guys, there is several videos done by David Lindsley's studio. So recently we got a part 2 and a part 3. So now I understand why someone tagged him on one of my videos, because I didn't realize he kept making more. But with 50,000 views, wow. I've gotten up to 2,000, you know, like that's why I often just like, not taking this all seriously. All the time. I am gonna make this channel more interesting soon. Because I really actually am an entertainer. I sing and dance and I do art, and that's all I cared about. I don't know, I slightly cared about the oil painting and the different photos of it. I know. So basically, David Lindsley, I do not have commercials photo on my website, right? But I ended up analyzing it just out of respect for her, because I do have a lot of respect for her and her research and all the things that she found out over the years. So basically, David Lindsley really believes that she has a photo of Joseph Smith, and the Larson Lockett photo is a photo of Hiram Smith. And he gives all these reasons, because Joseph always wore a white tie, so he couldn't have, deterred from that, which is illogical to me. And that hair. The third video is mostly like a play, and he's got music going, and I don't know if these were volunteers or if he paid them money, But if you're from Utah, I mean, most of your friends and family are there. They're members. Like, I could never pull anything like that off, because I just don't have friends and family enough that are members of the church and around me to do that. Although I do have some family members in another state, but they probably wouldn't do it. But I don't know. Kind of, I could come up with my own video of how I think the events turned out, and so I'm sure it was exciting and fun, and he has a lot of views, and a lot of people believe him. I don't think that many people believe Kim Marshall, but of course the guy, Jared T., gave more cred to her and her idea. So basically, here's my analysis. I'm showing a badly taken photo of David Rogers' painting. And Rachel Killebrew said that there are so many copies of this, she doesn't even know off the top of, like, if it was only 3, she would have known. She would have said there's just 3. So there's got to be more than that were commissioned and done and in their archives redoing this painting, because Joe Smith III took the daguerreotype as 2 references. There's a lot of background noise. I apologize, you guys. But so I basically mapped out and just did dots, because that's sort of what I've seen the forensic scientists do. So I have little dots on the painting. There's his nostril. There's the side of his nose, his lips, the side of his eyes on the painting. And how does that match up to Kim Marshall's? Extremely well. And there's a lot of things really, really, really wrong with this. Major difference between Carter's image. Actually, these are both Library of Congress, actually. Don't I zoom out? I believe. That's Kim Marshall's. This is a Library of Congress. And then you've got Carter's image. Carter's image is always stretched out more, but they both touched it up with India ink in the background. That's why it's white. So I don't know why they think Kim Marshall's is so different. It's a little bit more blurry. And she talks a lot on her website about how there's this blurring the farther away it gets back. Like, it's really clear here, but right there, it's blurry. And so major things are wrong when you compare it to the death mask. And I zoom in really close. There you go. That's where the nostrils, small nostrils on the painting are. That's where his nostrils really are. And even with camera distortion, I've taken so many photos of the death mask. If it is level, The nose is not remotely as long as the oil painting, and it's just as long in Carter's image, Library of Congress, and Kim Marshall's picture. It doesn't match the death mask, and the eyes are too close together in all of those photos of the painting. And I'll show you why I'm so sure that she has a photo of the painting, because you can see the canvas. You can see the canvas in her photo. Look at these lines, this glossed up picture, and then I start showing you was I just talking to the end of it? Let's pull up her picture. Okay. You can see the canvas. Like, I lined it up, and you can see that the camera was angled a little different, but so you see how off. So he goes on and on about camera distortion and things, and so there definitely is camera distortion in how these were photographed, and he's trying to explain how could the hand be that much higher, and so then that means it's of a man. I'm like, no. And then there's some major issues. So the nose, the mouth is too small. The hair is magnificent, right? You guys, like, people, like, I just show anyone my photo that's a guy and lives in Utah, or, you know, he could not have a receding hairline, although Truman Madsen said Joseph really did have a receding hairline, and I think because he, and I believe his speech was the 1960s. It was, his voice is very 1960s, you know, but he kept speaking later than that. But you know, this magnificent hair is not seen in any of Maudsley's paintings. There's a slight pop-up with some of these life drawings that I've got. I can show you here of Maudsley's. But this is Carter's photo of the death mask. And I don't know why. Well, the video's working again. It stopped working. It was being weird. But look. This is lined up perfectly as I could do it. And then all of a sudden, all of this is missing. And you got all this plaster right there. But somehow it went from here to there. And you see there's some hair right there. But this is bald all the way back to there, all the way back to there. And you can tell this hair is being brushed forward from the back. And I think in my picture it was a summer haircut, so I think it was just cut a little bit. But really you can see hair right there. Right there. But this is receded all the way to there. And so David Lindsley shows an actor with that magnificent hair, and just, some people think really hyper-focused. They get hyper-focused on some things. He's very hyper-focused on the clothing and lots of stuff. But there's a lot of things he just read William B. McCarl's article. Most people, any blog I read, up until when I was talking to Tegan Lucas, I mostly talked to her. I'm not going to quote her, but I will tell you, I think I can tell you, that she asked so much about this painting for a year. Like, she would just I'd hear from her, you know, every several months, and I'd do a lot of research, and I was always finding out so much since she started talking to me. And she might ask a question about this and that, and I would just find out a lot. But I remember she asked me, and I bought the Joseph Smith papers, the journals that they have compiled and worked really hard on to make. They have the most accurate wording that was in his journals. So it's 3 huge books, and I'm thumbing through it, and I find this painting, and it was September of 2019. That's when I found out that they believed it was done by David Rogers. But then, you know, I just said, Tegan, but I don't know if I believe them. They're not right about a bunch of stuff. I was talking to him. This guy was arguing with me, and he was wrong about a bunch of things in October 2017. So I was having a little lack of faith with some of the employees there, but I still really, really love all the resources and everything on there. That I don't think it's some conspiracy or, like, I'm an active member of the church. I don't think there's anything nefarious going on with the Joseph Smith papers, but I mean, it's a lot of people. It is a job. It's not like a calling. They're not perfect people, right? So it wasn't until 2021 that, looking at Kim Marshall, thanks to her, she detailed any conversation she had with the church history department. She was mad at them. She was mad as she was writing about this, but she did give a reference to the Saints Herald and the date. And then I initially found out one website, but you can actually find this. Sorry, I have the dishwasher going. That's how entertaining and professional I am. And I had headphones on, but it still might have picked up the dishwasher. So forgive me for that. But if you aren't familiar with what the Saints Herald is, it is our LDS newspaper that was run in Plano from, I think, 1863 to 1881, but 1866 is when Joseph Smith III, the president of the Reorganized Church, and it is the newspaper for the Reorganized Church. I think it really started before he even was, like, ordained as the president, but 1866 he was the editor. He was able to make some money for his family. There were enough people interested in that became his job, and running that church was his job. So he's the editor, and this comes out on August 15th, 1879, and I can just show you if you don't believe me. I'll go through to where it says the date, and then I'll read it on my website. So be patient with me. It's a news article about Los Angeles. Going back. So they're still in Plano. Emma had passed away that spring in April. News summary. There you go. So, of course, it's compiled in a book, but it's August 15th, 1879. Anytime you see a little Mickey Mouse hand on my website, look at it on a computer, people. The cell phone has so many glitches. I try to fix it because I'll add another link or another picture, and it just, a lot of those things just will not work for the mobile version. It just doesn't. And, but this is... And it had not even been a month prior that he had submitted this photo that they say is of a painting. On July 25th, 1879, Library of Congress does not say it's a photo of a man. They say it's a photo of a painting. And then, like, 3 weeks later, after that, he is selling photographic copies of the only authentic forward-facing painting of Joseph Smith the Martyr in existence. It was taken by a painter from New York. That's David Rogers. He was from New York. William Major wasn't when Joseph Smith was 36 years old. Joseph Smith, as we know, died at age 38, so he turned 38 in December 1843, because he would have turned 39 in December 1844. So in September 1842, he was not yet 37. So he was still 36. And so Joseph Smith III erroneously does state in the 1910 letter that it was 1843, but he only lives a couple more, 4 more years or so, and before he passes, and he goes blind, and he's just having severe health problems. Okay, but that's 1842. And then the 1910 letter, he says this painting, this one, is by an artist who also painted his Uncle Hiram. I'll read it in a second, but that's David Rogers. Okay, he's doing everything other than naming David Rogers. So William B. McCarl didn't have this. I mean, I'll reread his paper again, but he seems very oblivious to this, because I don't think BYU in the 1960s, like 1962, they didn't have the Saints Herald. I'm sure they didn't care about the Saints Herald, you know. I mean, Joseph Smith III read the Salt Lake Tribune. He got copies sent to him, but they didn't necessarily share that many things. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they changed it in the 1990s, but in the 1960s it was still the Reorganized Church. And then you can see that, keep in mind, this is his newspaper, he's the editor, this is going to be accurate. So he's saying the forward-facing painting was from life. Otherwise he would have said, painted it in 1860 by Victor Cress, who did the Jubilee oil painting, by looking at my father's daguerreotype. I think Victor Cress did look at the daguerreotype, and I'll tell you in a second here. And Junius F. Wells is stating it's David Rogers. You can see there in the contributor. You can read that and see. But it's in 1930. So from 1885 to 1930, he still says it's David Rogers. And he talks about asking all around. And they all talk to the associates. They talk to anyone. These newspaper people could get a hold of anyone that was alive in Nauvoo, and they did. But he couldn't find any evidence that Carter's image was a daguerreotype. And so Joseph Smith III, I'm trying to see if I put the link on here. He said in his journal that he found a daguerreotype he forgot was in existence when he visited William Major. So I was linking all these. I'll make sure I get the link to that. And I have this open. I had attached that. So there's some. I just was editing this an hour ago, and it just didn't keep. I'm going to go. I think it's right here. There we go. So this is. I'll link this. But this is July 1885 that he says that he was in Salt Lake at that time. And a photographer by the name of Carter, they chatted, talks about polygamy. I made his acquaintance, possibly sat for some photographs, and found him intelligent, quite inclined to talk along certain lines of sympathy with me and the work, but was unwilling to identify himself with our movement. But he doesn't talk about giving him or gifting him the daguerreotype of his father, though. And I can show you the date. So scroll back here. See, this is where he's stating that this is late in July 1885. Okay, so that's how you can see the date there. And so Carter had this done. See how level the eyes are. Nose is too long. The hairline is not receded at all, but Maudsley has been depicting Joseph since 1842 with a very receded hairline. And so David Rogers took some artistic liberties, and I think that's what he got Joseph to laugh about. I think Joseph was very depressed. He was trying to get him to smile. I'm like fully convinced Rogers was like, hey Joseph, let's paint your hair. Like, the hair looks painted badly. The profile, also alleged to be by David Rogers, that Brigham Young had, all the detail went to the hair. Like, the face is terrible, but the hair, like, you can almost see individual hair strokes. Whereas it's so badly painted in the forward-facing painting. Like, he spent 4 days with him. And so this is a 1930, but this is Junius F. Wells. Right there. He stayed with Emma from 1875 to 76, so in the winter, a long time. And he talks about how in this situation. I guess it's more in here that he talks about David Rogers. You know, Joseph was depressed and he almost despaired of getting him to laugh, so he resorted to drollery. And this succeeded, but then people, and he says, when you look at the painting, it just looks like he's about to laugh. Well, then what did Joseph think about that? Well, he thought he looked like a silly, Emma said that he said to her, it's a nice painting of a silly boy, but don't look much like a prophet of the Lord. And did she like it? She said no. I mean, did she think it looked like him? No, it doesn't look like him. So why would a photograph almost perfectly match a painting that Joseph and Emma said made him look like a silly boy, and all these photos of it would have John Hammer's ancestor saying, Joseph had a retreating forehead, which we believe, and Omachi and I believe, and it's in our paper, that means a receding hairline, and it's not shown in the painting, and it's very obvious that he had it in June 1842, because that's in the painting of him, the military outfit for the map. And the one that ended up on the map, they made him look like a little boy, but then there's a version that's highly detailed by Maudsley that his hair is receded as far back as my image is, except he's grown out and has a comb forward, which even, well, if you want to see a comb forward, let's look at this wonderful photograph, and I will give some credit. I got an email from the person who donated the picture of Wilford Woodruff. So a little update on, not this picture, this is different, but person who owned this said that it didn't come in this case, and he put it in this case, and it came in a different case, but it wasn't this case. It wasn't this older case. And he's like, you're right, this is later, but I put it in that. I don't know. But, yeah, it's still pretty clear. Ooh. See, his hair is coming from way back there. This is a comb forward. So this guy's probably lost his hair to there, but he has just brushed. I think a lot of times back then they would just comb all of it forward and grow it really long and just drape it over their head. Wilford Woodruff is doing the same thing. And so I don't know. After talking to that man, this is cut out, and I did see that on the church's website, so, but I won't talk about that right now. But I'll just go back to this and talk about the timeline. It seems very clear that David Lindsley doesn't know that Joseph Smith III said in his newspaper that painting was done when his dad was alive. And he was 36. It was 2 years before he died. That's 1842. Okay. Because Joseph wrote about sitting for the lithograph with Sutcliffe Maudsley. He talks about spending 4 days with David Rogers. So I think, yeah, I gotta fix some of this. So what you notice, so Joseph Smith III says that they had the daguerreotype and they used it to help sustain the characteristic likeness of his father. So read about the controversy. If you read, I think it's like on page 80 something or so, really far into this long thesis by William B. McCarl, that he does state his reasoning for thinking that the painting was based on a daguerreotype and it was by Major and not by David Rogers, and he just doesn't know that Joseph Smith III described everything that would point to David Rogers. And this is not the first time he talked about the daguerreotype, right? He talked about it to Carter, and Carter did sketch this. But I want you to notice how his left eye is not lower than the right, but you see it. You see it on the death mask. Okay, so if you just go here. So basically the 1995 study that was spearheaded by Shannon Michael Tracy, he paid money for Dr. Van der Graaf, anatomist, wrote books on anatomy, taught at BYU, and then Dr. Van der Graaf. And they both noted that the left eye on the death mask is lower than the right. Okay, so for me to get the death mask to line up with those paintings, you'll see the nostrils are at almost a 45 degree. Like they're at a height, not 45, but they're at quite a tilt because the eyes aren't level. So I had to tilt. I focused on the eyes, but then everything else was off, right? Because there was a step deformity according to Dr. Van der Graaf and Dr. Tegan, Lucas, and Machi Henneberg in our paper, which you can read. They do state that the left eye is lower than the right. So you can read this. This is totally free. You don't have to pay anything to read it. And it's missing from Carter's image. It's missing from Kim Marshall's picture. The nose is off. The mouth is off. It's not a photo of Joseph Smith. And it wasn't an injury post-mortem because it's seen on the skull of Joseph Smith that 6 doctors believe it's Joseph Smith, and that someone who's not a doctor wrote a paper, and that's the most popular, but 6 doctors think that the skull buried as Hiram Smith that has most of the facial bones is Joseph's skull. And the frontal bone, Dr. Van der Graaf describes the shape of it, and I was like, yes! Someone sees what I see as an artist. You can just see the shape. You can see it 3D since the pictures of the skulls are so good. You can tell that Hiram, on the death mask, that his mask has such a prominent frontal bone where his eyebrows are. And he doesn't really have any eyebrows, but there's just no way that, and then he thinks that what's this? Okay, that just was a pop-up. He thinks this is Hiram Smith. I 100% disagree. Completely disagree. Because Hiram's nose is bigger than Joseph's. It's bigger. It's longer. The cartilage goes lower. You just see the picture of Lucy, just look at it, and her nose is similar to Hiram's. It's just the cartilage goes a lot lower. It almost hides the nostrils, whereas Lucy Mack Smith, her nostrils showed. That's why that little daguerreotype is not her, because all Frederick Piercy drew her from life a year before she died. Her nose shape did not suddenly change to look like President Monson's. Like, it's just... yeah, your nose gets bigger, but it doesn't change that much. And hers didn't. And so Maudsley showed her with the tip of her nose a little bit higher. And so the tip of Joseph's nose is higher than Hiram's. You can see his nostrils. You can't. Okay, and so... oh, we're having some fun here. But yeah, he had a big nose. But he had a big nose in this life painting. This nose looks nothing like this nose at all. Nothing like it. And you see that it starts protruding like Joseph's, much higher. This man's nose, it starts protruding below the level of his eyes. You can see it's flat right here. So Lindsley does point out that I pointed out before, just the shape, this weird triangle shape that you just do not see. So that's one good thing in it. So David Lindsley, please look at my website and please see all these references. And it's just, he's not stupid. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm just saying, you're just not aware of what I wasn't aware of. Tegan hadn't kept asking me, I wouldn't have kept researching and trying to figure out and find out things and answer all of her questions, and then nothing that I found out ended up in our paper at all, right? But even though I spent like a year and I kept spending hours and hours researching it, we don't even have any of the artwork in our paper. I wish we did, but I didn't really write the paper, right? I was a contributor basically, and because I had done a lot of research, they would double check it, and whatever they thought was pertinent to this very, they knew this would be ripped apart, so they kept it very short. But my website, guys, it is not short. And yeah, so that is the timeline, but what you do see is that deformity. The left eye is accurate. It is lower. I should do a superimposition with this and the death mask. I don't know. You could maybe say it was a death mask, but I'm convinced that his statement, Joseph Smith III, what he's really stating is that he's using the daguerreotype. It happens to, okay, this portrait, painting 1843, is sustained in his characteristic likeness. Okay, there's a duplicate oil painting that he wants Ramsay to see. He's criticizing Ramsay's artwork by saying, oh, well, he always wore a ring on his left hand, but this guy's got a ring in the right hand. Represents a man of curly hair. My father did not have curly hair. Like, how much curlier that is than this is Ramsay's picture. Right there. And I pulled it up on the church's website. Where did it go? There it is. Louis Ramsay. This is the painting. This is the church's website. So I actually have that link on my website. It looks barely wavy, But to Joseph Smith III, oh, my father did not have curly hair. But also look at the hairline. Like, I think he was asking around. They're like, his hair, he had a retreating forehead and it's not showing. So he went ahead and looked at Maudsley's artwork and realized, okay, he was losing his hair. Okay, let's get the hair back. And the eye shape in a lot of these artistic work and people that still knew him, I think they're trying to tell him his eyes were shaped more like that. And I see that kind of in these. I really see it in my picture. But when I zoom in, I could really see. Here's all the artwork. You can see these eyebrows are really prominent in all these photos of the painting. So everything that is wrong with the painting is in this alleged photo of Joseph Smith that Commercial has. It's just she just doesn't have a photo of any human being. It's a photo of that painting. But there were many duplicate oil paintings. So this is the Iowa Historical Society right here. But all these details that when I zoomed in, I was like, oh, it shows, I just knew his face so well. I was like, oh, okay. And you can see the shape of that eyebrow. And you see how his left eye, has a little bit of a sharper. But you see how it just sort of does this interesting shape. I could see that Ramsay did catch that, And Utah probably, took some, he might have seen this, but this is Hiram. Hiram did not have a small nose. This is from life. And he had sideburns. Like, this guy doesn't have sideburns either, but he doesn't have the brush for it. He has very curly hair. He was able to straighten on the top, probably because he put a hat on. So he's able, this is a hat head. He has a hat head in my picture too. This is a guy who wore a hat and talked about to Emma, I would walk naked to see you, even without a hat on my head, and her dream, like, just even for women, it was important. Joseph said, go get your bonnet, like, it was a protection from the elements. So, yeah, go right here, check out the timeline, and he just didn't know. And almost all the blogs I had read before I talked to Tegan Lucas and was asked all these questions, and then I found everything out. It's just, the Joseph Smith papers, but other than that, I had to figure it out of what they were saying, Church History Department was saying to Kim Marshall. And no, I don't think they're all a bunch of jerks. I think the younger people are nicer than the older people. I'll give you that. But, you know, they're jaded. Some of them. They're just extreme. There's so many people jaded here. And there's... I mean, it's just, I'm horrified still of some things that happen to me. Of how someone could just lie. Completely lie so convincingly. And just ruin your reputation and say something to a bunch of people that also are around me. And I'm just like, no, like I have like written statements by someone that no, that did not happen. It's just amazing. Like I just, that was like, you know, I never thought, and like I've always been scared of what people say about me, but oh my gosh, just to see someone get so high off of all this story and this next story and to act so believable, it's a crazy world, you guys. So just be aware of that. So if you want to talk to me privately, in person, and you're like around me, I will gladly show you everything that shows those things being said just aren't true. There are specific things being said that are just crazy. So, there's that. It's just been really, you know, I have to work hard to not be jaded. Like, sometimes I just don't want to talk to people at church because I'm like, ugh, I don't know. This woman and her, you know, this family always glares at me when I walk in, so I start coming in a different door. And then it just really... Life is hard. It's Saturday and church tomorrow's Sunday, and it's always like, how am I going to handle church, you guys? So just keep me in your prayers that I can handle church. I love the church. I love taking the sacrament, and I choose to have faith that the bishopric are good guys. They're not perfect. No one's perfect. No stake relief society, no stake young women's president is perfect. Heather Daybell left the church. She was the Stake Relief Society president. You know, to me, that's right up there with the bishop. You know, like, a bishop went to jail in Utah. Like, it's the last days. People are going nuts. And you just gotta hold on. Like, fasten your seatbelt. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm holding on, President Nelson. I'm just holding on. So, you guys have a good day.